If you were a fan of Insomniac's 2018 Spider-Man game for the PS4, you'll be happy to know that the remaster for the PS5 is a fitting update to that beloved game. Insomniac hasn't messed with what is clearly a winning formula here. The original game is pretty much preserved as is, presented with updated graphics and all the DLC included, and not much else in the way of updates. For the most part, this is a sensible decision, because the 2018 game was already pretty damn good, and this remaster, with its handful of improvements, along with the updates that being on the PS5 entails, such as the immensely reduced loading times, make this the definitive way to play this budding modern classic. If you're not yet caught up on the PS4 game, in which case I'd like to ask to borrow whatever cave or bomb shelter you've been holed up in given its immense popularity as one of Sony's highest-selling games of all time, it's pretty much exactly what you would expect, an open-world, high-budget AAA Spider-Man game with the backing and budget that being a Sony first-party game brings with it to the table. That means it's remarkably polished, though this remaster does introduce a few bugs to the game, and being developed by Insomniac, it plays extremely well. The look and feeling of web-slinging across a virtual New York City is recreated incredibly well. Thanks to remarkably simple and intuitive controls that are so easy to master, they quickly become second nature, receding into the background, to such an extent that you won't even realize the complex inputs you are chaining one after the other to pull off the slick moves on screen. Equally important to this feeling are the incredible animations on screen, which are so smooth and slick and so authentic as a virtual recreation of a superhero can be at any rate, that it really does, to borrow a popular phrase, make you feel like Spider-Man. Honestly, the visual work in general across this game is spectacular. The original game was a looker, of course, and the remaster retains that, updating the graphics appropriately so they look shiny and great on your brand new PS5 as well. However, the real coup de grace here is the performance mode of the game, which has it running in a blistering 60 frames per second, and let me tell you, this is very clearly how Insomniac intended for the game to be played. That smoothness and effortless control that I mentioned, well, it comes to life in 60 FPS. It feels like a joy to play this game in this frame rate, and honestly, it feels difficult to even imagine playing this game in 30 FPS once you've played it in 60. The difference is immediately perceptible and palpable. There is a 30 FPS mode available with this remaster too, however. The aptly named Fidelity mode sacrifices the frame rate matching the original PS4's version to deliver higher quality graphics. The game states that this is the, quote, default experience, and it's easy to see why. The graphics look stunning in 4K, and the new lighting and ray tracing effects in particular are gorgeous. Unfortunately, as mentioned, this does mean you are giving up on that buttery smooth 60 FPS, which for me is a bridge too far. But in case you are curious to see what kind of high-quality graphics Insomniac managed to eke out on this more than 2-year-old game, or if you can make peace with the lower frame rate better than I could, then this is definitely the way to go for you. The graphics, sound design, writing, story, music, all of it comes together to make the game feel like a playable Marvel movie or comic. Spider-Man on the PS4 is a love letter to the character and the decades of media behind him, with loads of references, Easter eggs, callbacks, and of course plot points that call to mind the web-slinger's outings in various other media. As I mentioned earlier, it all feels authentic. A large part of that is how well the game also pulls off combat, which is at least half the battle in a Spider-Man game. Insomniac again pretty much nails this. Superficially, the combat seems to recall the Batman Arkham games, though of course, what works for Batman doesn't work for Spider-Man, which is why Insomniac adds so many of their own spins to it, to reflect Spidey's unique powers and incredible athleticism. The combat in Spider-Man will give you as much as you're willing to put into it. It is possible to simply mash the square button through most encounters, especially on easier difficulties. But the true joy of combat comes in chaining together long combos and engaging with all the tools available in Spidey's arsenal, from all his gadgets to aerials, dodges, leveraging the environment and the objects within it to inflict damage, evade attacks, and simply look stylish and slick as you fight. Once again, Insomniac have wisely decided against rocking the boat, and once again, it works out incredibly well in the remaster's favor. This adherence to the original game, however, does have its downsides too. There were several criticisms the original game received, and with one exception, those criticisms can all be leveled against this remaster. The much maligned stealth sections featuring other characters such as Miles or MJ, for example, are still here. And while I never really hated them as much as, well, just about everyone else, if you did, then you will still hate them here. The hacking or spectrograph puzzles from the original game were also similarly criticized, and once again, I actually quite enjoyed them. But again, if you didn't, then the exact same thing being in this game will hardly go down well for you. Thankfully, as in the original game, you can simply skip any puzzles you like. Then there was the repetitive nature of the activities in the open world, which sent you after hundreds of mindless collectibles and trite side missions. These I did hate in the original, and in my experience, they were the biggest blemish on an otherwise great experience. These two, unfortunately, are present in the game as is, and they do mar the experience, more so now than in 2018, what with so many Sony open world games since having contextualized in-game side activities so much better. The one flaw of the original that has been addressed is the long loading times. This, of course, comes with the territory of being on the PS5, with its extremely fast SSD. Loading is basically instant, and Insomniac even flexed the PS5's SSD muscle by allowing you to outright turn off the, quote, quick travel animations in the original game, which had Spidey traveling using the New York subway. While that concept is humorous by definition, on the whole, I am glad that the long loading times are gone. If you really want, you can find a setting to turn on the original animations in the options menu. By and large, this remaster is pretty much on par with what I expected from it. There is one area, however, where it disappointed me relative to my expectations. A lot has been said about the PS5's haptics. The DualSense controller is packed with advanced and sophisticated haptics that can increase immersion. I was eager to feel these haptics in action in Spider-Man, and unfortunately, these disappoint. They are there, but they are very slight. So slight, in fact, that I originally thought I had enabled some accessibility setting to turn down their intensity by mistake. Going into the options menu revealed I had done no such thing, unfortunately, and that the classic vibration settings very barely feel like anything. This isn't a game breaker, of course, but it does come off as a disappointment, given the sheer potential that haptics could have had in a game like this. I started this review by saying that if you loved the 2018 game, you will still love this remaster. That comes with the territory of this largely being the same game with some slight, if far-reaching enhancements. Conversely, however, if the 2018 game did not do it for you, I can't see this remaster changing your mind at all, unless your sole reason for not liking the PS4 game was a lack of ray tracing, or 60 FPS, or quick loading speeds, or some combination of all of those. If you fall under neither of those categories and this will be your first time playing Spider-Man, then you are in for a treat. With great power comes great responsibility, we are told, and Insomniac, given the power to develop a Spider-Man game, lived up to their responsibility by delivering a game that stood out as among the best on the PS4, and now stands out as among the best on the PS5. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from Gaming Bolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.